everybody, and welcome to the Metal Magdalene with Jet right here on Metal Messiah Radio. Tonight we have a special guest with us back on the show. We have Karl Willetts of Memoriam. Welcome back to the show, Karl.
Good evening, Jet. It's always a pleasure to speak to you. It seems like it's our annual hot date. Once a year we get to hook up and have a little chat about how things are going, and it's getting rather regular. They're going to start talking about us, I reckon.
It is. I mean, ever since the beginning, right? The first album for The Fallen, and then we had Andy on. I figured I'd give you a little break, right? For the Silent Vigil. Now you're back to talk about... again. Yeah, you're back to talk about your latest release, Requiem for Mankind. Karl, when you first started out with the release of your first album, did you already have it in your mind that you wanted to do a trilogy?
When we started recording, not particularly. It's when we saw the album cover that that Dan produced for us for the first album, for The Fallen. That's what kind of triggered off the idea of a story to be told visually, which kind of like aligned with the experiences we were going through at the time. I think, the albums visually form a kind of a triptych of artwork. They follow like the flow of the phase of mourning. The kind of the experience of that. So the first album obviously is initially the first phase, and I think the lyrics on the first album kind of reflect that kind of initial phase of the sorrow and grief and experience of mourning. And the first album cover, depicts the funeral procession, the initial phase of the dead leader being carried over the ravaged, kind of battle-scarred landscape. And so from that, I thought it was such a strong kind of imagery that we could roll with that and kind of like continue to use Dan to create these kind of like masterpiece kind of artworks to kind of align with the kind of story. So the next album that we did, the Silent Vigil, kind of followed on from that. It was more the lying in state, the kind of like the more kind of somber, kind of respectful kind of experience of the followers all standing around the coffin of the dead leader again, paying tribute to him. And the lyrics in many respects kind of reflected that feel as well, a year on from the initial first experience. And now the final kind of piece of artwork in the triptych, in the trilogy of albums that we have kind of put together, is the final phase, the burial of the coffin as it gets interred and taken into the ground. So it kind of, there's a nice flow across all three of the albums, both kind of thematically with the lyrics and also, with the actual artwork as well. It's a journey. It's definitely an intense, exciting journey for us over the past 3 years, and we've achieved an incredible amount in such a relatively short space of time. It's been very very life affirming in many respects. Life affirming through death metal. It's the irony there, but it's been great. And now we're at that point, where we've completed this trilogy. And as I say, it never really, the idea only span out from seeing the artwork when it first was delivered to us. So it kind of grew kind of organically from there, and it's worked really well, and we've got this point now at our third album where we think, well, where do we take this? Do we continue that theme and do another album using Dan and kind of continue that theme, or do we break off and do something else? So it's quite an interesting point to be at.
And so what are like some of the subjects that you covered in Requiem for Mankind that end this trilogy, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of use a number of themes and subjects really throughout the whole process of songwriting with Memoriam. And there's several clear themes that are in there, and obviously the theme of as I've mentioned there before, the experience of mourning and sorrow and grief plays a large part in the lyrical inspiration on the album. There's certain songs on the new album that really kind of like latch into that topic. I'm thinking specifically the title track Requiem for Mankind and In the Midst of Desolation. They are two clear songs which are about That's kind of like the process of the funeral and the sorrow and grief that goes with it. And it's my young children making lots of noise in the background. And also, the other themes that I explore is obviously there's always going to be that element of lyrics about war. You know, I've always written about war. The past 30 years have been like the main subject matter that I've written about. And there's always going to have songs with that theme throughout whatever I write lyrically. So, yeah, that what comes to mind specifically is the opening track, Shell Shock, and the closing track with words, Fixed Bayonets. They are specifically about the effects of war, and the veteran kind of fits into that in a kind of, it's kind of almost a crossover. It fits into it on the face value. It's about, you know, ex-servicemen basically, but it's really all about the failure of the government really to protect them and take care of them when they've come home from their tours of duty and experienced all sorts of, you know, psychological trauma. So yeah, it's got a slight kind of political tone to it as well, which is another theme which is kind of consistent throughout writing lyrics with Memoriam. I do like to, you know, occasionally get onto my political soapbox and pontificate about the things that I think are wrong with this world that we live in. So I think two clear examples on the new album of that is Refuse to be Led and Austerity Kills, which are, you know, just very kind of politically driven. And there are also songs of hope in there as well. I mean, it's quite bleak. Requiem for Mankind is about the ultimate downfall of mankind, a kind of snapshot of where we are in the world right now, at that kind of almost like tipping point where we... but there are songs of hope in there, songs of empowerment. So I think Undefeated and particularly Never the Victim are two songs which have got that kind of element of giving strength and taking strength and experiencing life and taking the experiences that come with life and moving on and being stronger through that. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. You know, we all go through life. We all have, you know, ups and downs and bad experiences and good experiences. But ultimately, it's how you deal with these experiences in life and how you come out the other side of those experiences and learn from them and become a better, fuller person, you know, and yeah, we can all relate to that. So there are songs that are full of hope and, you know, statements of strength and empowerment. So yeah, in a nutshell, that is the lyrical themes that are pretty much consistent across all the albums I write and are very overtly present in the new album Requiem for Mankind.
So, Karl, like you were mentioning a little bit about Austerity Kills. So, what was like the catalyst behind that song, and how does Austerity kill, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, it's an overtly political song, Austerity Kills, you know. Written from kind of personal perspective, really, but just a general view on the world that we live in. You know, specifically here in the UK, we've experienced decades of continual conservative right-wing kind of governments that have always seemed to, you know, cut back on the sources of public welfare. You know, benefits, disabled kind of like benefits and all the things, the National Health Service, all seems to be kind of being whittled away, ultimately affecting the members of our society who are, the weakest members of our society, the ones that are dependent and need these benefits and services to help them in life. And, as a result of this, we're seeing, an increasing kind of spiral of people being driven into, poverty here in the UK. I mean, the rise of things like food banks here in the UK is a pretty new phenomenon. There was no such thing as that really, perhaps say 5-10 years ago, and it seems that they're everywhere at the moment. People are dependent on them to supplement their low wages to try and survive everyday life. So you're finding old people, that the older generations, in poverty. You're finding children in poverty, and I just find that's totally, disgusting. We're here in the modern Western world and the 21st century, and yet we can't help and we're cutting back all the things that kind of like are the essential fabric of our society. So it seems like it's falling apart, yeah, and that's reflected across the world. You know, other countries could have the same experience as well. And it's you know, the people in power, the bankers, the richer echelons of our society, those who retain the money and the power, they're not the ones that are being affected by these cutbacks. And so, yeah, I thought it's really important to say something about it, you know, and kind of use my position as a writer and a lyricist to go out and say something about that. There, you know, as far as I'm concerned, the governments have got blood on their hands, you know, and are directly responsible for, you know, the deaths of hundreds of people, you know, through the effects of austerity. Yeah, particularly, you know, disability benefits. I've got a very close friend, and he's just one of thousands of people who've had all their disability benefits, you know, slashed. As I say, they are kind of like, they're not intricate cuts of a scalpel. They are butcher's knife chops, and you know, they just affects your very being as an individual. And just to see that happen to people that I know and love, yeah, it disgusts me. So I had to write something about it, and that is what Austerity Kills is all about. It does.
It does, and I was going to ask you too, you know, if any of these themes, you know, rang personal to you. And as you had just mentioned, you know, you have friends that these kind of things have affected. So, I mean, what kind of emotions do you feel personally when you perform these songs, Karl?
Yeah, I think it really helps. You know, when you write songs from a personal perspective, you know, you obviously, they mean something more to you as well. You know, for years I've written songs about, you know, war and things like that. But yeah, I've never been in the armed services. I've never, you know, fired a weapon in anger. I've never, you know, kind of like been involved in any kind of like conflict. So it's quite written from a different kind of perspective. But when you write about songs that you know, are something from your heart and do have some kind of political agenda or some personal meaning, you know, Nothing Remains on the last album was about my mother with dementia, you know, and Refuse to Be Led in particular, another song with you know, political rhetoric involved and written from a personal perspective. About the issues of Brexit and the rise of you know, the right-wing ideology and that kind of thing throughout the globe. They are, you know, I think you put a little bit extra into them because they have certain, you know, social meaning and certain kind of personal content to them. So yeah, you know, when you deliver them, they do come through in a lot more concise and, yeah, kind of in a very sincere, genuine way as well. So I think people understand and appreciate that and get that feel from it.
I mean, besides your music that you create, Karl, what are your thoughts on politics and music in general?
Yeah, that's something that, yeah, we get asked quite a lot. You know, a lot of people have said, well, you know, there's no room for politics in music. You know, there shouldn't be. There's keep politics out of metal. And, yeah, from my perspective, that's just fucking bullshit, you know, absolute bullshit. I come from a musical tradition and heritage, which, you know, is the old anarcho grind crust punk scene from the UK here in the mid 80s, late 80s. Yeah, I'm talking like bands like Discharge and Crass and Amoebics and Antisex and Sacrilege, all that kind of like, and all these songs. They were kind of had a kind of a meaning, a motive, a message to them. Yeah, they're almost apolitical because there was an anarchist edge to them, but there was some kind of political intent behind the lyrics and with some real meaning, and that's what kind of moved and motivated me and fired me up as a young person and drove me into being interested in music, and that's where my heritage lies. So it's quite rewarding for me at this point in my career to actually, you know, refer back to that time and start to write some songs that have some, yeah, kind of meaning to them. You know, all protest comes from yeah, resistance, and music forms an essential part of that, as, you know, sharing of ideals and beliefs across the world through the, you know, the medium of music. And I think it's a very strong platform to do it through. And yeah, it's essential. It's essential. You know, all kind of, you know, ideas put through music, I have real resonance and real strength and connect directly to people, and, you know, can affirm their own beliefs and make them feel more secure about the way that they feel. So I think it's a positive thing.
And what were your thoughts on listening to the album for the first time after it was all done?
Well, okay, yeah, we were we pretty much had an inkling that it was going to be quite special, really. I think this new album is very much a product of the previous two albums. You can definitely hear the bits from the previous two albums. I think without doing those previous two albums, we couldn't have made this album that we've made just now. There's definitely elements, and we've learned a lot in that relatively short space we've been together over 3 years, and it's been really kind of rewarding to be able to do that. And so definitely when we sat down. When we started writing the songs in the first place, we knew that we wanted to use Russell and go to Parlour Studios. We've kind of always wanted to do that, but because we've moved at such a fast pace, it's been quite difficult for our schedules to align. And so when the Silent Vigil was released, we kind of approached Russ and said, look, what is your schedule? When you've got some free time? And he gave us the date in February 2019, which gave us a good 8 to 10 months period to write some new songs. And throughout that kind of songwriting process, the lyrics came at the end, the songwriting process, we were firing the songs over to Russ at a very early stage in their development, at a very early demo stage. We were sending the songs to him. So he was listening to them and giving some feedback and getting some ideas together about what he wanted to achieve with the songs, and his ideas very much align with what we want to achieve. So it was a very, very smooth process once we finally got into the studio in February 2019 of this year, and sat down to record it. It was an incredibly smooth process because we already knew what we wanted to do with the songs, and we already knew where we planned what we wanted them to sound like. And so it's great with doing that. And it went smoothly. We had a great time doing it. It was probably, from my personal opinion, the best recording experience that I've ever had in the past 30 years. It went so incredibly smoothly. And we knew that he'd do a good job because you could tell the way that it was being recorded and the way he's putting it together and the enthusiasm and the input that he was putting into it was phenomenal. But when we actually finally got the final, you leave him to it. You've done all the recording and you leave him to it for 2 weeks, and he fired the songs back at us, and we were just kind of like blown away really, because the production value of what he's added to what we're doing is exactly what we were looking for. It is almost like the missing link, that kind of that final kind of part of the jigsaw that was kind of not quite there. We were searching for. We feel now that we've got all the ingredients in place. The blueprint, that kind of definitive Memoriam sound has been achieved on this album with the help of Russ, and that really is the big epicness of the sound. Really, the dynamics of the production give it that really, really big sound, whilst retaining that kind of rawness as well. So, we're really pleased with what he's done for us, and we feel that in the future, when we will finally do get around to recording another album, we definitely will be using his services again, and definitely going down to Parlour Studios in Kettering and repeating the process. But we've done 3 albums in 3 years, and we've done it's been a really mad, fast, exciting pace. So I think really at this point we've decided that we're gonna stand still for a bit. We're gonna just take stock of where we're at and enjoy the moment for what it is, and maybe not rush into doing another album straight away, and just take some time out to appreciate what we've achieved, and take a breath and just go out and do some shows and promote this new album and the old songs as well, and maybe concentrate on doing some other things before we go back into the studio. So maybe leave it for a year or so before we return to the studio. There's no big real rush to do a new album now that we've achieved what we've done with Requiem for Mankind, I think.
It sounds kind of funny when you say do the old songs. The old songs are barely 3 years old.
Old songs from 2 years ago, yes. They're ancient.
It's just crazy. I mean, just from the moment that you guys started the band, it's just been crazy to me. I'm like, this is insanity, and nothing sounds like it was rushed, you know what I mean? It was so fast, but it doesn't sound like anything was rushed. Everything sounds great. It's just crazy for me.
We are working at a fast pace. Yeah, I think we got the old adage that we want to, we don't want to stand still just in case we keel over, and we are aware of our age.
I know, I hear you.
But it's kind of has got to that point. If we did push forward now at this stage, it probably would kill us to do another album right now. So
no, don't do it.
It's quite nice to just stand still now and just reflect on what we've achieved, and that's been a lot. That's been a hell of a lot.
Yes, it has. So what do you guys have coming up for this year? Now that you got this album all taken care of and in the bag, what do you guys got coming up for this year now?
Yeah, well, we've got quite a few gigs lined up for the rest of the year. Once again, we are heading off as our weekend warriors that we are heading off virtually every other weekend and doing 2 or 3 shows a month, which keeps us focused, keeps us satisfied, and keeps our fires alive, but not too much. We're not going to overdo it. So yeah, we've got quite a few shows lined up in places we haven't played before as Memoriam. So we've got some shows in the Republic of Ireland, in Dublin and Limerick, which we're looking forward to. We've got a show in Scotland and Manchester, which we haven't played before as Memoriam. We've got a show next Saturday, actually. How many days is that? 3-4 days. We've got the album release show in London to look forward to. So we're currently in the process of trying to learn the songs, which is quite interesting because it's one thing recording them, and then you've got to actually learn how to play them live, which is a bit of a challenge. But we were getting there with that one. We've got another rehearsal before we do it. I'm sure it'll be fine. But yeah, and then we've got quite a few festivals coming through, and we're starting to get the next year filled up as well. But on top of that, we've got a few little side projects and ideas on the go that we're going to be doing. I mean, I know Whale has got his little side project called Darkened that he's working on, and Scott also has got a side project called As the World Dies, which he's currently putting together at the moment. So that sounds quite promising. And at some point in the not too distant future, I'll be working with my good friends Mr. David Ingram and Cam Lee to do a 3-fronted vocal. The 3 tenors of death metal, a band called Troikadon, which will be pretty interesting thing to do. I'm quite looking forward to that, but that's not going to be for a while yet.
I've been waiting on Troikadon already for a while.
Yeah. It's just really hard to get our schedules to align, because when one of us is really, really busy, it's kind of almost feels like, I can't do it now because I'm really busy. Then when you've got some free time, the others are really busy. So, but it will happen. It's definitely going to happen at some point in the future. But the question mark of when is still there. But yeah, alongside that, we've got this other option here, which we've kind of been playing with. When we first started out, we always said we wanted to do cover versions of songs that inspired us to want to be in bands in the first place. Bands like, as I mentioned before, Crass, Antisect, Amoebics, kind of Sacrilege, Discharge, all those kind of bands, some kind of like cover versions of those grind crust punk classics that we all know and love. But we just never got round to it because Scott ruined it by kind of coming along and suggesting that we make a load of new material, which kind of worked really well. So that kind of idea got parked at the first hurdle, basically. So we'd like to revisit that idea and maybe release a series of 7. We'd probably do it independently ourselves, and release like maybe a series of 7 inches or like an EP or an album or something, a limited edition album. Through the likes of Cosmic Key or something like that, just ourselves, just to sate that idea and get that idea out, because it's something we've got to do, while we're alive, and that'll keep us quite busy for the next 12 months, I think, before we kind of start to pick up the kind of like the reins and start concentrating on doing the next album.
And Karl, what's the best sites for people to go to learn more about the band, see what your tour schedule is, and that kind of thing?
There is only one site, and that's our website, which I administer. It's www.memoriam.uk.com. That's where you go to find out what's happening. when I update it.
Well, Karl, thank you so much for coming on the show to talk about your latest release, Requiem for Mankind, out on Nuclear Blast Records. Y'all can check them out on their official website.
Absolutely.
And you can find their tour schedules and info on how to pick up merch. And Karl, thank you so much for coming back on the show. And we look forward to talking to you again when you release the next album.
Absolutely. Maybe next year. You never know. You just don't know what's around the corner. So thank you very much for your time, Jet. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and I wish you well this evening.